Hi everyone. For this week's assignment, I've chosen the role of workplace accommodations in the employment of people with disabilities. This article was written by Priyanka Anand and Purvi Sevak in 2017. A little bit of content that we'll cover today, main issue and the topic, nature and the significance, some research criticism, external reference to the topic, and some future applications. The main issue and the topic of this study, the main topic is the role of workplace accommodations. So the study was based on investigating if workplace adjustments could improve the employment rate for individuals with disability. So the goal was to understand workplace adjustments could improve the employment rates. Some of the employment rates of individuals with disabilities based on Anand Sevak in 2017 were significantly lower than those without disability. But this study also was built upon the study that Krauss conducted in 2015, and that study was revising the disability statistics of the individuals with disability and their employment rates. In 2014, Krauss reported that 34.4% of individuals with a disability were employed compared to 75.4% individuals without disability. And it is important to note that this is compared to the entire United States population. Some of the background information of this article, it's mentioned this study was built up on the Krauss study that was conducted in 2015, and some groups have better success in the labor market than others due to differences in race, educational level, and disability type. So among other surveys, American Community Survey that was conducted in 2009 and between 2009 and 2011, they were reported the higher employment rates for those with higher education, such as college or associate degree, and those with only a hearing disability. Therefore, according to Anand and Sevak in 2017, the relationship between disability and employment is actually based on individual workplace and the physical enrollment characteristics. So to better understand what workplace adjustments could potentially improve the employment rate of individuals with a disability who also not currently, at the moment when the survey was conducted, were not receiving any sort of adjustments at workplace, Anand and Sevak developed two paths to analyze the relationship between disability and employment. The path one was employer observations, which meant that employees with a disability would be offered the workplace adjustments by their employers based on their observations. And the path two was employees requesting the workplace adjustments and employers accepting them. So it is really important to know that these are also the leading assumptions that Anand and Sevak developed in order to investigate the relationship between the disability and employment, but also how workplace adjustments could increase the employment rate of individuals with disability. So how the study was developed, the emphasis was on adding to existing literature. So to use the empirical evidence that many non-working individuals reported employment adjustments as an obstacle or barrier to obtaining employment, and that workplace adjustments could positively impact individuals with disability employment rates. And the second component was based on investigating the provision of an extensive set of workplace adjustments that can be flexible schedule, personal assistance, or in transportation. And the third component was based on a sample of work age individuals that want to work by applying for virtual reality services, VR. And just to give a brief definition of what VR is, that's a digital 3D environment that provides individuals with interactions with others by manipulating or even adjusting the environment around them in the workplace. Some research criticism and external topics that were references and correlated to this study. The goal of this study was, as previously said, to improve the employment rate of individuals with a disability. So as previously mentioned, one of the findings was that employment barriers are related to the workplace adjustments that individuals are not or are receiving at the workplace. But also the primary factor that impacts the employment rate is the previous work experience of the individuals with disability. So there were several studies conducted on this topic, and Anand and Savak's study and the studies of other researchers on this topic are positively correlated. There are findings that the same workplace adjustments are actually valuable references. Wong and Blansk, they both stated that employment barriers relate to the workplace adjustments, while also Wong stated that individuals who experience disability, such as physical disability or returning back to work after a physical injury, are facing the major difficulties in returning to work duties without any workplace adjustment. So per Blank's findings, most frequent adjustments that employees were requesting were actually the modified job duties, a flexible schedule, or even change in the workplace policies. And they were vital for employees' performances. Some of the data that was used for this study, Anand and Savak used the SD survey of disability and employment. And that data offered a detailed analysis of workplace characteristics and employment obstacles. So in this study, SD included all workers of all ages, but also based their study on the individuals that are not receiving any government benefits. As mentioned before, as we mentioned some other surveys before, some other surveys included workers that were receiving government benefits, and American Community Survey was one of them, also such as Health and Retirement Study and the National Beneficiary Survey, which also included the individuals with disability that did not have any work experience. So this SDE survey firstly was conducted from November 2014 and May 2015. It was based on only applicants aged 25 and 60 years old. They were also in the VR system. And most importantly, this study covered only 3 states in the United States: Mississippi, New Jersey, and Ohio. One of the main methods that this study used, besides using the SD data, it was the empirical method. So this empirical method was based on 3 main components. Employment obstacles faced by non-working people with disability. With this component, they wanted to investigate if simple workplace adjustments could address employment barriers faced by non-working individuals with disability. Regression analysis was the second component. They wanted to investigate the relationship between the employees with a disability who are receiving workplace adjustments at the moment when the study was conducted. And the third component was observable differences, which that meant comparing the employment rates between individuals with or without disability who receive and do not receive the workplace adjustments. And that takes us to like some employment history, because as the survey was also compared to, as the survey data was also compared to American Community Survey data. Many American Community Survey data was mentioned in the previous slides because the survey provided some crucial data that was compared to as the survey. In 2017, for example, Ohio had a 37% of individuals with disability employed. New Jersey had 39.2, while Mississippi had 28.8. So there was no any significant difference between these three states with the employment rates of the individuals with disability. However, the employment rates of the individuals that do not have any disability, they were significantly high comparing to the data that was actually provided for individuals that were having a disability and were employed. Also, as you can see, the Mississippi, for example, had 28.8 of individuals with disability employed, and they're slightly behind New Jersey and Ohio, but still there's a significant difference between employment rates for the individuals with disability and without disability. So table 2 will actually show the sample of descriptive statistics that also SDE sample used, and Anand and Savick used the data to compare with American Community Survey. And that's where we can actually see, for example, table 1 first. That was a correction. Table 1 compares the descriptive statistics of the SDE sample, individuals with disability, to the national population of individuals from VR agencies with individuals with or with a disability, comparing them to American Survey. They also have found that those individuals with disabilities from SDE survey are very similar to the population of individuals with disabilities that were coming from VR agencies. However, there were some significant differences, as we already mentioned them in the previous slides, but we can also see here that people with disabilities that were applying for VR services and they're coming from American survey, employment rate was 17.1, while for the people with disabilities that were applying for VR services that SDE covered, they had 34.4%. And just to mention again, SDE survey did not include the employees who were receiving any government benefits, while ACS did. Here, table 2, as mentioned previously, this is the descriptive SDE sample that was just talking about the statistics that SDE sample used. So they've covered Mississippi, New Jersey, and Ohio. They had 2,282 individuals that were participating in this survey. And then we can also see here below that education did play a high role in actually obtaining and keeping the jobs and actually, improving the employment rates. And as we can see here, the college bachelor degree and high school diploma were actually having some differences when it comes to employment rates, but it is a little bit unclear because bachelor's degree or higher degree had only 11.7%, while here it shows that individual with disability that are only having high school diploma are actually having 41%. Here on the right side, we can see the individuals who had a work experience or never worked, or actually, worked both before and after onset. But what's really important here to see is that how highly they ranked placed on their employment. And that also covered accommodations in the current and the last job. So we can see down below that flexible schedule has a 49.8%. So which is most likely is the half of these individuals reported they're requesting those flexible schedule. But what's actually interesting here is the transportation. Transportation in this study was actually ranked as the highest priority for individuals with disability. But on this data and this sample, it shows that only 19.3% of individuals request help in transportation. So as of right now, this is a little unclear data that it cannot give an exact picture what accommodations could actually improve the employment rate, except flexible scheduling and probably job coaching training, such as personal assistance. So if we go back to the results from those three components that we mentioned, employment obstacles that were faced by non-working people with disability. 29% of individuals have a sensory disability, either like hearing or visual affects, and the 74% of them has a physical disability such as spinal injuries. So the analysis provided evidence based on Anand and Sevak's final thoughts that employment difficulties in obtaining a job were related to workplace adjustments, which means that those adjustments could improve the employment rate. So the most common barrier is the individual's condition, actually, that prevents them from working. But also based on the results, workplace adjustments could be seen as the barrier if the adjustments are not provided and then individuals are not actually requesting the adjustments in the workplace. Previous work experience can also impact the decision in which individuals would decide if they will request those accommodations. From the regression analysis provided the results of the relationship between the current employed individual with disability and also individual characteristics in the experience of the individual's characteristics, but also the experience of individuals who receive the workplace adjustments. So per the results, individuals with higher education diplomas are most likely employed and they receive workplace adjustments. Although the flexible work schedules and transportation are significantly different from others, and these two barriers were reported as the most desirable workplace adjustments that actually employees are requesting. Here we can see that as mentioned before, the previous work experience does impact the mindset of the individuals with disability at their current workplace. Based on the previous data, there was no statistically significant relationship for those with sensory and psychiatric disability, but also individuals with a higher education degrees are more likely to be employed. But if you remember in the slide where we actually talked about education, the individuals with a high school diploma are highly employed compared to the bachelor's, to the individuals who actually hold a bachelor diploma. So the data is a little bit unclear as of now. But one thing that is stated is that, and it's proved based on this study, that there was a statistical significance for individuals with physical disability and needing a personal care assistance. Some of the conclusions and resulting outcomes from this study, as mentioned, there is a significant difference in the characteristics of individuals who report a specific employment barriers that could be addressed with some workplace adjustments. So the flexible work schedule and transportation, for example, or the personal assistance, these results show that workplace adjustments play a significant role in obtaining, keeping, and even being successful in the workplace for individuals with a disability. Some demographic barriers led most likely individuals in poor health or with a low education level degree. They were facing many more difficulties in obtaining employment. So based on this study, it is really unclear whether the demographic barriers could be the barrier or the employer's willingness to provide the workplace adjustments for individuals with a disability. Anand and Savak stated really well, and I go back to the data that in the table 1, that where we actually showed the transportation request, where was only 19.1% of individuals that were requesting in the workplace. He found that 1/3 of non-working people with disabilities reported that inaccessible workplace transportation is a barrier to obtaining the employment. I must note again that this is only covering the sample from SDE survey and not the American Community Survey. Some of the future implications that could actually add up in this study and improve the field. This study was specific to Mississippi and New Jersey and Ohio. So this study could not provide enough evidence to speak about the entire population of the United States. So no evidence would speak about other states, which could be this study's future base and extension. As the survey only covered the characteristics of employment barriers, but it did not cover the severity of the disability in the work-related skills level of individuals that actually sign up for VR assistance. And there were some significant implications that could improve the employment rates for individuals with disabilities that are actually lies in the workplace policy adjustments. So adjusting those workplace policies can bring a positive impact on employment. And I must repeat again, because Anand and Savak repeated this throughout their study, that 1/3 of non-working people with disability really reported that inaccessible workplace or lack of transportation are significant barrier to their employment opportunities, even though for some reason in the beginning of the survey, we've seen that not many people reported that transportation is really necessary. At the end of the study, after the survey was conducted and the study was conducted, they've seen that transportation is actually playing a huge role in employment rates. Thank you.